Welcome to day 3 of Stamp Camp Week of Webisodes. Now, I have been waiting 6 months to try to bring this product to you, and I was so excited when our friend Ken Oliver developed it, and we can show you wonderful things.
It's called Color Burst.
Right.
It's a concentrated pigment powder, and it can give you spectacular results.
You're just going to have to see it.
Come play with us.
Well, here they are. They're called Color Burst, and I'll tell you, the containers are little, but boy, they pack a punch.
Really, they're very unassuming little containers, but boy, get a little bit of this on something and pow.
Well, first of all, you have the 6 colors shown. So we've got the crimson, yellow, green, orange, blue, and violet. And you're going to...
am I going to show it first?
Okay, we'll bring in a project.
Let's bring in a project and
first.
Then I'll show you. So I'm going to scoot these over because I'm going to be using these.
Okay. Yeah, actually, these are the only ones we have, so they're very precious around
today
here.
While we're doing this, right?
Here is one look that you can get.
And what we're looking at is that background.
Right.
It is a spectacular background. Those colors, that's not from a paper pack, that's all from the Color Burst.
Right.
Okay, I'll show you how simple that was to get that background.
Let's go.
Okay, so here is watercolor paper. So first of all, I'm going to bring in the blue, the green, and I'm even going to bring in the alizarin crimson.
Are you?
And each one of these are filled with a powder, so you can hear that, you can't hear it, but you can feel that there's a powder in there, and you open up the top, it's got a tiny little nozzle on there that's going to actually sort of spritz the powder, or it's going to puff out actually onto your paper.
It's funny you would say that because I kept thinking of them as puff powders, but that's not what they are. They're Color Burst.
There's a couple of different ways to do this. You can, and I am using watercolor paper. It is designed, this very concentrated pigment powder, it's designed to go on porous surfaces. That's what it says. I've used it on glossy, and I'll show you an example of that later.
Okay.
It has a different effect, but it is most vibrant on a porous surface, like a watercolor paper, like cardstock, something like that.
Now, a warning, what you're going to see now is it put on the paper. You're not going to see very much.
Right, you're not going to see much. You might be able to see the little, I'm puffing it, I'm getting little puffs of color on there.
Little sprinkles.
It doesn't look like much of anything.
And it's not supposed to.
And then I'm going to add a little bit blue. You might want to back out a little bit once I get, so also you're seeing like a little powdery sort of going everywhere. And I have to tell you, sometimes the color can be a little insidious. You get some of that powder somewhere, and later on you'll touch it with water, and it just the water just
it's supposed
the color explodes. I want to make sure that I have enough. Okay, so I puffed it on there. I just squeezed it.
Now you didn't do the red. Did you want the red?
I didn't do the red yet.
Okay.
Because this is what it's going to be like when you do the powder first. Then you spritz it with just water.
Look what happens. It just goes to town.
It explodes with color.
I have to tell you, I love this very uneven edge. I think it is a marvelous use, and you saw how easy that was.
Right. So that's on there. You let it dry like that. You can also dry it with a heat tool that tends to move the water around, so you get a little. You can also blot it with a paper towel if you want it a little drier. I'm going to leave it red, and then it is pretty, and I'm just going to get a little bit more accent. Now I'm going to add to that already wet paper a little bit of red, just in a couple of different places, just a couple of different accents. It gives you a little bit more texture. You can see, and afterwards you can add a little bit more water to sort of make it burst again. That got really dark.
It did get dark.
But here around
you didn't
on the
expect
edge, well, I didn't. I expected to see a little bit more red. Play with it. I used a lot of blue.
You did.
And that really, but you can see around the edge. Sort of zoom in on that. There you can see if there's if you use less, you're going to get some lighter colors. But you can also, I'm going to try blotting that with a paper towel to see if we get a different look. Just sort of pick up some of it. There we go. It brings it up just a little bit.
And like you said, let it dry. You could do it with a dryer, with a heat gun.
Beautiful. You can add more water. You can keep playing with it, reactivate it. It's fun.
But
It's
it's
fun. Look
pretty.
at that.
Okay.
It's vivid. It is. It's very intense color.
But what I like is that it's easy, and it
Yep.
gives you a look that I don't think you can get with any other product.
Right.
Now, in this case, we've cut it into pieces to put onto this center step card, and also to place in the center or in the inside of the card. So you can see that variety of look. Now, this was using, just so you know, the center step die cut card. You could also use the template. The butterflies are just simply out of black cardstock, but look how striking they are on the card. And then we added the paper toll. This is Artful Affirmations, that beautiful something wonderful happens every day, and some jute twine. So that's going on right there. So kind of nice to see the technique and then to see the different products that were used to create that.
So beautiful background to put anything right on top of it.
Now this is again an all-over background. In this case, the dazzles are used. This happens to be Susan's flowers,
Right.
and the Hello Friend, this oval label, as well as the flowers and the border down
Now
there.
Susan started by creating that background on a separate piece of cardstock actually on the watercolor paper. So similar to what we did. So you can see it's on my fingers. So she used a little bit. I think in this case she spritzed that paper first, got it very wet. Then
and
when
put the
you
powder
put
on?
the powders on, they're going to
Okay.
mute a little bit more, and if it dries, and you can get little puffs that actually get some texture afterwards. But for the dazzles, she placed a dazzle onto the watercolor paper just like this, and then she took some of the alizarin crimson, and there's a little bit of water on this palette. You don't need too much. Puff some of that in there. Just need to get a little puff going. There we go. Just a little bit of it in there, and with a brush and a little bit of water, you can start painting inside the lines of those dazzles. Just
I bet
like
the
that.
dazzle is going to help keep the color within the channel,
Sure.
in this case the petal.
Keeps it right in there, so you can get it dark, you can get a little bit of that off and get it a little bit lighter, get the color just the way you want it.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, so that's kind of a neat little watercolor look with it. And so go ahead and paint in your dazzle all the way around.
So it's
and
a
then-
different way to
Right.
use your color burst. So there it is. Actually, that's a nice way to see what it does in the background, as well as if you decide to use it
Right.
straight up. Then you would be cutting it out, cutting right next to the dazzle
Right,
edge.
just like backing the
Right.
dazzle.
Okay. And then we've got a little bit on the inside. Very pretty.
I love
I
doing
like
this-
seeing it in the small sections.
I do too. I like doing it on larger pieces of paper and then just cutting it apart and using, and that was journaled on, computer journaled on afterwards.
So you can do that too.
Beautiful.
Okay, here is another look. Wow, you really get much more of a swirl going on.
Right. So with this one, get it nice and wet first and then add the color burst. A couple of different colors. It's just a green and yellow. You're also seeing that, let's see, I don't need to. You're seeing paper twine there, paper cording. You can also use ribbon, but if you use paper cording, you can spread it out like this, unfurl it, open it up. Take some of your green, in this the phthalo green color burst, add just a little bit to a little bit of water, put it in a spritzer, and then spray that paper cording, and that dyes it a green. You can do that on any ribbon as well. Ribbons
Any
that
white
will-
ribbon?
Any white
Okay.
ribbon, go ahead and change the color of it, and that's what that was done. So
Okay.
a couple of different ways.
That's a very pretty. Now, this kind of look, you really could have only gotten with alcohol inks or re-inkers.
Other than this, right, but this one is water-based. So
Right.
just using water
Very
and that
nice.
watercolor paper, and it just spreads out
Very
nicely.
nice. And there's some on the inside.
And it's been embossed on afterwards. You can just go ahead and emboss your message on there.
Now I have to tell you, this is one of my favorite looks, is having it here, and you've got a demonstration of this, right?
I've got some of the steps that have already been done here, so we'll just do the finishing step in just a moment. Make sure that I have a paper towel for it in just a second. But here is the watercolor paper, and I went ahead and I got it pretty wet, and then I I sort of squeezed and sprinkled on the lemon yellow all over it, spritzed it a little bit more, just like we did in the beginning, and now you've got yellow everywhere. Then I took the Artful Affirmations stamp set.
Let me slide
Very hard
this
for you
in
to
just
see
so
it
you
here.
can see it.
Right.
And you've got this one.
That one right
You
there.
only live once.
And it is embossed with clear embossing powder because I want to be able to see through to that yellow when I'm done. So I've got it on here, and I'm going to show you a couple of different ways not to do this. First, I'll show you the way to do this. When it's like that,
and then you can show them how not to do it.
It's completely dry now.
Right.
I did completely dry it before I emboss it, and I used a heat tool to dry that to get the paper
so color
nice
burst,
and dry. Color burst,
and then
water,
the embossing,
and then dry it, then the embossing.
Okay.
Now I'm going to get, which one did I use?
Probably the
red. Yeah, I think I used the red or the orange.
Or
no,
the
it
orange.
was the red.
Yep.
And and then I'm going to go ahead and
So you're going to
squeeze
go
that
over
on
top
there.
of it.
And go over the top of it.
Now this is what I find so amazing is you really don't need much. In fact, you can probably stop because it's just these tiny granules. Because they have such intense color, that is what's going to be released with the water.
Right. I'm
That's your
getting
paper towel
my
now?
paper towel now. Okay, ready to go. I've got a paper towel standing by, and I'm going to start spritzing this. And it takes off.
That's the magic I love.
Then you take it,
actually, I
you
like
can
it
see
like
it
that.
developing it. But I want to get it off of that embossing.
Sure.
So I'm just going to blot it around the embossing.
Oh, wow. Boy, that was laborious.
Yeah. Okay, so here's a note about this particular technique. Watercolor paper wants to soak up that water.
Sure.
If I put too much water on there, if I got it wet before I put the red on, then this is what I did. Then the water seeped in behind it, and then it sort of lost the image.
That's a surprise.
Right. So that's why I put the red on when it was dry.
So
and then
do what
just
you
add-
said.
Yeah.
Do
and
what Gail says.
Put the red on when it's after it's dried, and then spritz it with just enough water and stop and blot it off around that image quick. And there
Fun
you go.
that the red got into the art because that
Right.
was the watercolor paper behind it.
Right, because it just sort of, it's still beautiful. Gosh,
Okay.
look at all that.
Yeah, it's gorgeous.
A couple of different looks. And one other thing about this is that I first tried it on glossy paper. And that's a completely different look. It changes the colors. It does just sit on top of it. It works. That's still a really neat look, but it's a different color. And another thing I want to mention, save all your little scraps and pieces because these make nice borders and, you know, just little strips to add to your paper. It's just beautiful.
Very fun. Now, this particular card, just to show you the other things that are in it, we talked about the Artful Affirmation stamp, so that works beautifully. A little bit of the holographic fireworks, just on the edge
just a tiny
there.
little bit peeking around there, and the twine.
And the jute twine.
jute
Now,
twine pack.
something else I want to show you is also this idea if you want to put paper towel on top. I like the mix of the shiny foil paper towel against the watercolor paper. I just
Right.
think it works really nicely. And this is actually what we showed, I think, yesterday. So there's the Garden of Posies. You could use anything that has those colors.
Right.
And I also took the same die cut that we had yesterday. This happens to be the Mirage set, and just adding that. And I just love that background that it creates, even more so when it's an irregular pattern,
Right.
when you don't totally saturate the area that's going to go on your
Right.
card.
I agree.
I just think it's stunning.
Fun.
Now, more that you can do is shown here.
Okay, so you take your cardstock, you create a very modeled background. Then
So this is cardstock, not watercolor paper.
the leaves that we're looking at
Okay.
here, if we look at them individually, the background was created with several different colors, and then after it was dry, it was stamped on with just a brown ink.
This is the little stamp
the
that was
small
used. These are the $1.49 stamps.
Then you've got something to stamp on, and it creates that beautiful effect.
that
Those
pretty?
gorgeous leaves.
Now, if you
great.
probably had more water, you would have more they would
blending.
get closer together, right?
You get the paper wet first and then spritz it on there, it immediately dissolves into the water. If you put it on dry and then do the water, it stays a little bit more in place.
It probably depends how
More
much
texture.
water you put. If you put more water, it's
That
going to
too.
go.
Play around with
Now,
it.
the label here and this decorative edge, let me turn this over so you can see a little bit better, and the inside was all done with the benefit of the design toolkit #1. I do have to tell you, this is in limited supply, so
Okay.
just don't want anybody surprised.
That's one of our good ones.
Yeah,
Okay.
well, many good ones. So I also have a couple of other examples here. Do you
Okay.
want to talk about those?
So in the same way, well, wait a minute, not in the same way. Well, it's completely different ways. So this one, the stencil was used, and so get your stencil in place, and then do your color burst, and then add the water, and
Wow.
see how that affects it.
That is nothing but gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous. Wow. And of course, you know that's the fern stencil because we showed that quite a bit the other
Right.
day.
So in this one, this other one here, okay, now I'm going to bring it in because that is just a gorgeous look. And this one,
Interesting.
you're going to put some of the color on the paper. You're going to go ahead and spritz it. You're going to activate it. You're going to get this background look that you see here. Then you're going to place the paper onto a stencil. Okay? Let it dry that way, and when you remove the stencil, the air actually pulls the color into the holes of the stencil so that it creates that technique. That's really an amazing technique.
I never would have thought of that.
No, that's really amazing. I love that some of it gets pulled in, some of it just sort of depends on
Yeah.
how much that's sitting on there, and it just, look at that.
Pretty,
It's almost like a
lot of
photo
colors
in there. Beautiful.
Now, our last project is a scrapbook page. Hooray!
It's a stunner of a scrapbook
It
page.
is a stunner. Now, several things are going on here. The first one that I can see is this piece has been color bursted.
Right. So we're taking, and here's a piece of it.
Yeah.
We're taking ivory cardstock and doing some of that color bursting right on there. But the thing is, it wasn't done just to put on the page. This actually was used for something else, and Lene looked at it and she went, oh, hey, that thing that I was spraying on is beautiful.
Yes. And that's what you're going to find with
That's
this.
what you're going to find. So she started off with cardstock, with ivory cardstock. She created a mask with a die cut.
Right. So here we have the 2 lacy borders,
Right.
which is just a beautiful cutting die.
So she cut that also out of cardstock, and we also have some of these paper flowers.
Right. These are from Prima, and you get a whole bunch of them, 72 of them in this tube, and because they're white, you can do all sorts of things with
Right.
them.
I'm going to go ahead and spritz these with a little water. I guess this is the same one. I hope this is just water. That one's got a little something in it.
Oh,
little
dear.
water. It's all right. Spritz these with just a little bit of water right on there, and then I'm going to use the blue. Put on some blue right onto it, right on the page, and right onto the paper as the background. And afterwards, of course, the background is going to be something that you're going to use as well. I'm just going to use a little bit of green just here and there. And then I'm going to spritz. And purple?
Yeah.
Okay. And purple.
And purple.
Different
Thank you.
areas for different things. Okay. Make sure that I
You
get that
didn't
on
get
the
much
flowers.
on there, but okay.
Do you
That's
want
okay.
more on there?
Well, no, that's fine. That's fine. Down, girl, down.
Okay, and then we spray. Come on, little sprayer. I'm running out of water. I'm just
Running out
doing
of
some. There we
water.
go. Okay, a little bit. Gonna grab that other one.
Okay.
And whatever it is, it is. There, it's water.
Yeah, good.
But look at it go.
Yeah.
So the more you spray, the deeper, darker it gets. It's moving it around, it's blending it. So now you've got a couple of things here. You can just let that dry. You can dry it with a heat tool. And when you lift these items, now you've got this die cut as a piece that can go on your scrapbook page.
There you can see
So
a
you
little
can see
better.
it here. And you've got the remainder of
Image,
what's
yeah.
left. So you've got these flowers and you've got what's behind it. And that's what Lene sprayed some things over and over, and then she took that paper.
Oh, so it had moved?
Right.
Okay.
Well, yeah, you spray and you get this depth of stuff moving around, and then she just tore that strip off and put it right onto her page.
In fact, I see some little spritzes up there and down below. Just gorgeous. Look how she layered those flowers. Let's get in close there. Again, using the jute
love the
twine.
white one in the middle.
Isn't that
That's
pretty?
just beautiful.
And she's added a button in the center.
Up here in the corner, she used some of the cardstock and stamped on it after she prepared it, and then foam taped it up in place.
That happens to be Lacy Things,
Right.
and it has small pieces as well as larger ones. There's another butterfly from Lacy Things.
Here's a piece here that she would have used it as a mask, so she did the entire piece and used that as that border area, and then here's 2 of those die cuts over here.
And Wishing You a Beautiful Day is part of that stamp set.
That is just a beautiful little mixed media work that,
So easy.
I know I said mixed media, but this was easy.
Yes, right. So you just poof on the powders, add some water,
And you get color bursts.
You are good to go. So see why I've been so excited about it. I just think there are so many things you can do with it, but mostly it's a great look and it's easy peasy. Yes.
So,
okay, join us tomorrow, please. We'll have more outstanding goodies with Week of Webisodes Stamp Camp.
Stamp Camp. See you then.